Rails for about 4 years now. And my talk's called Navigating Rails with Peace of Mind because there's two things that give me lots of headaches in my experiences across different projects. And those things are complex forms and microservices architecture. So I'm sure you've had headaches with those as well. So I want to talk about why they give me headaches and what are some things we can do about it. So complex forms and accepts nested attributes for. So you can use complex forms and accepts nested attributes for if you want to create two resources at the same time. So here is a complex form, and it's actually not even that complex. I have an author, and I want to be able to create books that belong to the author at the same time. And so here's the code to do that. I have my parent model author. It has many books. I have the book class that belongs to the author. And if I want to be able to create both at the same time, I can add accepts nested attributes for books, and that will work. I also have to add some more code, in the controller. In my new action, I have to add author.books.build to be able to create fields in the form for those. And in my view, I have to say, fields for books, and then put in the book attributes. But it doesn't stop there. You also have to deal with strong params, and it's pretty confusing. If I want to be able to create books along with author, I have to first say books underscore attributes, and then pass an array of the book attributes. And it's confusing how it's reversed, because I have to permit an array to pass a hash, and I have to permit a hash to pass an array. And so let's go ahead and finally submit this form. And that works. I can go edit the author. I can see, it saved the book. So let me go ahead and add validations to this. So I'll just start by adding validations to the author. Just validating the presence of first name and last name. I'll go ahead and submit this. And this works. That's great. I see the errors for first and last name. Now let's go ahead and add validations to the nested resource, and this is kind of where everything starts falling apart. So I'm going to add a validate presence of to the title for a book, and I'll resubmit the form, and I'll leave the title blank. And this is what happens. It creates an invalid book model object, and so, you get this error, and it's trying to render the attributes for an invalid book model. And so to fix this, I can add an option to accept nested attributes for, where I can say reject if, and then if the attribute for title is blank, then it won't be able to submit. So once I add this and resubmit the form, well, it works. That's great. But where the heck are my book attribute, the fields for my books? They're just completely gone. And so to fix this, I have to go into my create action, and when the author fails to create, I have to then rebuild my books object. So once I add this, I can then submit my form and get errors, the right errors that I need, and the fields are back for my books, but I still don't have any validations on them. So what have you seen so far for accepts nested attributes doesn't dissuade you from using them. You can go to the Rails GitHub and see that there's open issues still for accepts nested attributes for. This one in particular, the uniqueness validation with the scope is just broken. And what I suggest to do instead is just to use the normal RESTful routes and create your parent and child resources one at a time. So first just create your author. Once you create it, you then have a link to start creating its child resources. So you can just add a book, and all of the validations for that book will work because you just have a simple, clean form. So my suggestion is to keep it simple. Just avoid complex forms if you can. And the next headache that I see all the time is with microservices, where people want to build lots of applications early on. And this is pretty apparent in the startup world, where people are trying to build applications as fast as they can, and they don't really think about consequences once you start separating things early on. So I had this one project where I thought originally it was just going to be this just a Rails app with a single database, but we were a new team and we were building quickly, and it soon evolved into a Rails app with a back-end API. There was the front end got separated into its own application as a client-side Rails Angular app. And it didn't stop there. There was another application that shared a user table. And actually the client-side Angular app had its own database to collect data in a separate process. And then we had an iPhone app, an Android app, and this just became a huge nightmare. So, what was wrong with just keeping this as one single app? Especially early on in development. Was there some conversation I missed out on, monolithic versus microservices discussion? So, I started looking into reasons for monolithic versus microservices and trying to find some case studies where microservices really worked well. So, I found a couple of cases where, with SoundCloud and Carbon 5 is this dev shop in Los Angeles, where they had these very large, complex applications, and they were losing lots of productivity, waiting hours and hours for the test to finish running. And so they had very successful experiences splitting up their monolithic app into individual services. So I realized that you need microservices when your test suite takes hours to run, your models are several hundred or thousand lines of code, and this is just making you less and less productive because of the over-complexity. But the thing is, with my team, we didn't have any of these problems. We were a team size of less than 6 people. Our biggest models were like 400 lines of code. Our tests only took 5 minutes or less to run. But I was less productive because I had to deploy, managing deployment for all these different applications, managing all these different API endpoints. So I was wondering, why in the beginning we had to create this very complex design. And there are 2 things in play that I realized. And one is we just wanted to over-engineer and pre-optimize and look ahead in the future. For example, one part of our application was payments processing. So you figured you could extract that out into its own application. And so down the line, you could use the same payments application for other things. Or maybe you want to separate out a templating part of the application and reuse templates for other things. But business requirements change all the time, and you actually never get there. You never end up using the thing that you thought would be so great. There's also this front-end developer paradigm that I think, I think the notion of front-end developer versus back-end developer is something new. I haven't been developing for that long, but when I started, there really wasn't such a thing as a front-end developer. But now with the advent of JavaScript frameworks like React or Angular, front-end developers never have to touch the database. They can mock the calls to a backend and work on front-end and create a really nice dynamic UI, which is great. But one of the patterns I see now is backend developers create a backend API, front-end developers can just mock it and make their work on their own app separately, but it adds a layer of complexity. So why can't we just keep the monolith? Well, I think this is something that would make a lot more sense and it'd be much easier to manage. And Nick Sutter has a really great quote about this. He says, "What's so hard about having proper object design in one monolithic Rails app? You can have cleanly composed separate layers with interfaces that allow reusability. simple testing and debugging. And that's something you can do by namespacing your models, or creating service objects, or extracting logic into gems to create a nice, maintainable, single monolithic app. So I wanted to look at some success stories of monolithic apps, and Akira Matsuda, get another shout out, has a really great presentation of cookpad.com, where he's got a team of 50 developers, and he gets 50 million unique visitors a month, 15,000 requests a second, 2,000 tests, and they're able to make this work. Granted, they have their own in-house deployer, autoscaler, active record adapter, so maybe they're some really, really smart guys, and they can make it work, but Martin Fowler also has some really good advice about this, and he says that almost all the cases he's heard of where a system was built from scratch, starting out as a microservice system, it's ended up in serious trouble. And he says you shouldn't start a new project, even if you think that'll be worthwhile to split it up. So the best way to find out if your software idea is really good is to just build a very simple version of it and test it out and see how well it works. And there's this one quote to sum it all up, and that's "learn to walk before you can run." So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Questions?
Has anyone used exception nested attributes before and likes it? What's a good case for when you have to use it?
Let's say you have to